In this video, I'll show you how I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator today, the filters that matter in 2026, and a simple outreach system that works without burning your account or your reputation. So what Sales Navigator really is it's the most accurate B2B database that you can access without buying third-party data. And there's only really two ways to use it. You've got account search and lead search. So accounts are basically companies, and lead search are the individuals who are within that company. Now, most people, they'll just jump straight to leads, but that's actually a mistake because it's changes on the company level that tell you when they're likely to buy, if you know what to look for. Okay, so before you message anyone, you have to ask yourself this question: what needs to be true for a company to need what I do? And this is where the account level filters matter. Now, the 5 baseline filters that I always use for my business and also my clients are annual revenue. So you can literally put in whatever currency you've got. There'll be a minimum. So generally with businesses that we work with, we work for around the 1 to 10 million mark. So you can go in, you can put your minimums, you can also put your maximums. So I'm based in Australia, so I put AUD. You also then want to do company headcount. So obviously a certain size of business is easier to work with than others. And I'll go into that a little bit more, the importance of that in a second, but you can choose that here. Headquarter location is also really important for certain businesses though. So if you're somebody who can work with anyone anywhere, this is less important. But if you're a geographic specific business, you're going to want to toggle on businesses that are headquartered here, with the exception of if you want to speak to, for example, satellite offices of large multinationals. This would probably curtail the amount of potential that you have, but it's just something to be mindful of there. And then finally, industry. So obviously, if you work with certain types of industry, you can put these in here so you can find all of the types of businesses that are more likely to work with you. So let's do it here live. So let's say I'm going to work with companies with 1 to 50 employees that are based here in Australia and are in professional services. And business consulting comes up as well, so we'll put that. So we've got 59,000 results here, quite a lot. But the real leverage comes from the 5 change-based filters that you can apply in this section, and we'll go over that now. So basically, if you're dealing with companies that are growing or shrinking overall, you can go into company headcount growth and you can set percentages here. So if you want to work with companies that are growing between 5 and 20%, you can do that. But likewise, company headcount growth isn't as accurate as if you're working with specific departments. So oftentimes, for example, I work with lean marketing teams. So I might want to go down to department headcount, and this is where you can put in your filters here. So I know that typically we're going to need, a marketing team that is between 1 and 3 people. You can also go then to department headcount growth. So what we can do here, we'll select marketing. So again, might want to select between 5 and 20%. So this is now indicative that marketing is not growing in professional services, but staying quite flat. So we'll take that out of this filter for this example. Now, the other change-based filter that you can use is job opportunities. So if a company is hiring on LinkedIn, hiring brings in new blood who might want to create change. And this is good opportunities for businesses who facilitate change. So job opportunities are a really good one for certain types of businesses, certainly recruiters and things like that. It's a really good indicator of a company that's growing now. And the final 2 are inside of recent activities. So you can select senior leadership changes. Again, senior leadership changes are quite significant because senior leaders tend to be the people who have the sway and can make changes. And finally, if you're working with tech companies and things like that, if you find anyone who's had funding events in the last 12 months, you can put that in there and then you will have a really solid list of which then you can go and find people. So what you do when you've got your list here, so there's 11,000 results in this particular search, You can then start to build out a list. So you can select them all, you can save to list, and then you can create a new list. I'm just going to put in test list and create and save. And then what you need to do is go through, like if there's a lot of companies, this is the time consuming part, but you will need to go through each page and find specific companies and add them to your list. And it's only once you've done that, then you go to the leads section, which is where we're going to actually find the people to connect to. So if we jump over now to leads, and I'll get this to expand a little bit as well. So I scroll down and press see all features. So this gives me a more feature rich section to search for people. Now what you want to do in the leads section is there's a couple of things. When you're looking for specific job titles, most people will think, all right, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to search for a CMO, for example. So if I typed in CMO, what will come up is people who have CMO in their job title. But these job titles can be edited. And the problem with the fact that they can be edited, you could have chief fun officer, who's essentially a HR professional. Actually, it's definitely not HR. It's going to be something like marketing or something like that. So you can have them in as these strange job titles. And if you use current job title as your filter, they actually won't show up in this search. So what you want to do instead is you want to use a combination of their job function and their seniority level. So say, for example, I want to speak to sales and marketing professionals. Will include sales and marketing in here. And the seniority level, I deal with mainly business owners and director level people. So I'm going to include director in there. I'm going to include owner, CXO, vice president. This gives you a much more accurate list in terms of where they're at in their career and the kind of people that you're wanting to speak to. So a reminder, if you're using Sales Navigator, you're always going to want to be optimizing for behavior rather than just demographics. So what we'll do is remember the list that we created inside the account list. You can actually include that here. So I've got my test list here. So now basically I'm left with 11 people who are in companies that fit my criteria and are on LinkedIn. So once you have this, it's now starting to come good. The next layer up is you want to think about, right, what's the easiest path into speaking to these people or connecting with them or increasing the likelihood of connection. And that is to focus on the connection type. So on LinkedIn, it's got 4. So you've got 4 different types of connections. So you've got first degree connections. They're people who are connected to you directly. You can message them anytime you want. Awesome. Then you have second degree connections. So it's we're not connected, but we know we have someone in common who's both connected to us. You've got group members. So say, for example, if you go to certain groups or certain webinars about the topic of which you help. So for example, if it's AI automation, if you end up joining groups that are about AI automation or joining events, you can have group members there. And then finally, you've got third degree connections, which is basically we're not connected and we have no common connections. So when I work with clients, the simplest way is to just focus on the top 2, your first degree and your second degree connections. If I want net new contacts, I'm going to select second degree connections. So of that list of 11, it's now down to 8 people of which we have a common person in our network who could potentially be an introduction, or it may be enough to just mention, hey, I noticed we're both connected with X person. Would love to connect because there's some synergy in what we do. That's part of what we do is work on that initial message. But now we're cooking with gas. So we're almost there in terms of pulling together this search. Now, if I had a much larger list, what I would do is get as many points of commonality as possible. So for example, if you're looking to find someone who has some shared experiences with you, you can tick the shared experiences section. So this is reduced further down to just 6 people now. And another really important one is you want to speak to people who are already active on LinkedIn. And this is where posted on LinkedIn is actually a filter inside the Sales Navigator. So you select this, and hey, guess what? There's only one person who fits all of that criteria. But guess what? She's based overseas in the Philippines. So what we'll do is just to give you a bit more of a statistical significant result here. I've removed the key accounts list because I literally only put 25 accounts in there. So that's showing you the importance of that account list. You want that to be as big as possible so that it can include as many people as possible as well. So once we're in here, it's a similar idea in terms of geography. You want to head down to the personal section, select geography. So if you want to make sure that you're speaking to people who are based in your country or based in certain countries, you can go into, so if I say, for example, I just want to speak to people who are based in Australia. So that 304 now goes down to 266, because a lot of smaller businesses may work with staff overseas in places like the Philippines, South Africa, Bangladesh, India, places like that. So this is making sure that the list that you have is people who are only based where you can speak to them. And again, the reason I'm repeating this, it's important to think about the behaviors and the changes that are happening in a company that are going to present opportunities to you. So if, for example, you're a recruiter or you're thinking about companies who have just had a leadership change, you're going to want to go to changed jobs. So now you're left with a list of new people who've joined companies who are in your target list and are ripe for outreach, basically. So when you think about behavior and the changes that are happening in a company, you might think, oh, I'm always going to go for high growth companies because they're going to have more money, but that's not always the case. So if you help a company with operations and automations and things like that, high growth companies will feel that pain. So in that scenario, it would be right to target high growth companies. But if you're selling some sort of efficiency tooling type service, shrinking teams are the ones who are going to feel the pressure the most. So you can actually put in the account section negative growth. So a big point to note here is don't treat Sales Navigator like it's an outreach tool. The goal is really to create lists of people who are warm and know you. And this is where most people get it wrong. They hammer the LinkedIn just trying to find new people to speak to. But there's only really 4 ways that you can get business. You can reach out one-to-one with people who don't know you. So that's cold outreach, cold calling. You can reach out one-to-one with people who do know you. Same again, you're warm calling people or warm outreaching people. You can go one-to-many with people that you don't know. So that's running ads. And you can go one-to-many with people who do know you. And that's creating content. And the easiest wins always come from the people who already know you. So instead of blasting new leads every day, make sure that you work the relationships that you already have. And one of the great things that you can do is you can actually create lists of people who are already informed to you. So if they attend webinars, met you in person, engages with your content, all of these people can go into lists, which you can then periodically contact. And one of the other things you can do is when we set up campaigns for clients, we never focus on people who don't connect with us. So we'll do an outreach campaign, and generally speaking, I'll go into these numbers in a bit more detail in a minute, but not everyone's going to connect with you. So the goal isn't to try and get the people who didn't connect to connect. The goal is to have conversations with people who did connect and build those relationships just like we would build a normal relationship in person. But one of the best ways that you can ensure a higher connection rate is by really dialing in your personal LinkedIn profile. So when you send out a connection request, I get about 10 to 20 connection requests every day. I'll go into that person's profile and I can tell in a split second whether that's someone who I'm going to connect with or if I'm going to decline the invite. Now, most people are still treating their LinkedIn page like it's a resume, but it's not. It can actually be the front door to your business. So making sure that you're working on the messaging there will ensure that you get a higher connection rate overall. Okay, so here's a checklist of what you need to have to ensure a high-performing profile. First of all, you need to make sure that you've got a nice professional-looking headshot. Invest time or budget into getting decent headshot shot by a professional, or you can use something like Nano Banana and just take a iPhone image, put it in there, and tell it to clean it up and make it a professional headshot. I prefer the authentic version. So this is actually an authentic photo, but I just asked it to replace, because I had a suit on, and I just asked Nano Banana to replace it with a polo shirt, because I wear polo shirts quite a lot. So make sure you've got a clean headshot. Make sure you've got a banner that will complement the headshot. So those are the aesthetic points that can really help. This is a big one. So you want to make sure that you've got your headline really dialed in. Words that you don't want to include in here, even if it is your job, is sales. As soon as you have sales in your title, it is going to drop your connection rate, because people will just assume that you're connecting with them to sell them something. And then the final main hotspot on a LinkedIn page is that you've got a really good feature section. So you've got a thumbnail image that's easy to see on mobile. So anyone who lands on my page, if they want to literally redo their, and you can do that if you want this resource, just jump onto my LinkedIn page, go to this feature section, and you're going to see when people click on that, they have the ability to subscribe to the newsletter, and they will get, as a result, my GPT as part of that. So it's really important that you get that profile right, because it makes such a difference when you're doing outreach. Now moving on to a couple of strategies and tactics that you can use on the platform that are a little less known. This is one of the most underrated ways that you can find people who are talking about the very problem that you solve. So if you go into your LinkedIn search bar and type in something that people might be talking about that you can help with. So for example, if you're a finance broker, let's type in interest rates. Now we're left with a whole heap of things. We want to just narrow it down to posts. So once you press post, you want to go over here to all filters, and then let's work down. Top match is mostly the best, but if you want to be, super early at commenting on things, you'd switch that to latest. Date posted, you can either do the last 24 hours or the last week. Now this content type for most business owners is irrelevant, but if you're a marketing-based business, perhaps you do video or you're a designer, these content formats may actually make a difference. And by choosing a particular type of format, so say for example, if you're a videographer, you're able to then just see posts that are video based. So if we go back here now, I'm going to reset that filter. Now the next one's down really useful. You can, if there's a specific member that you want to see posts from, you can type that in there. If there's particular companies that you're looking to target, you can add that in there. Now this is a good one as well, because you're actually able to go in and save this URL. So you can go in to scroll down here, first degree connections and people that you follow. And that will basically give you a curated list then of people that are in your network or that you're following that you can literally just go through and comment on or engage with. These ones here are less important. So if you're looking for specific mentions of particular members, this is if you want to go into real stalker mode and there's only a handful of people that you really want to make sure that you're being visible with them, you can get really specific there, likewise with company, and same with the author as well. And you're also able to go into the author's keywords and search something like, let's say we're looking for mortgage brokers who are talking about interest rates. It'll basically look at the headline and do that. So if I press this now, I'll deselect this. What's left is, so we've got mortgage broker. Let's go in here. Yes, mortgage broker. So you've got a lot of different options there in terms of finding people who are posting, because it's one thing messaging people in a direct way and speaking to them directly, but there's other ways to stay visible, and engaging with their content and their posts is one way to do that. So now you've seen how to find people in Sales Navigator, how to continually engage with them to stay visible. There's a few other tactical things that I want to make you aware of. So if you're looking to reach founders, it's best to try and aim for companies of 50 people or less, because these are more likely to respond to you. Making sure that you select posted recently, because recent posters is indicative that they're active on LinkedIn. Because let's face it, some people are on there on LinkedIn, but they're not on there on LinkedIn. So there is a difference. The first degree connections, so people that you're already connected to, they will close faster and book meetings faster than trying to reach new cold secondary connections. Events and groups will reveal intent very well. So what I mean by that is, let's say we want Australian founders, right? Well, you can actually go in and find groups with that in the title. So if you join some of these groups, marketing and growth professionals, Australian startup founders, if you get a good number of people in there, likelihood is you'll end up with a lot of commonalities with those individuals. And the second one's events. So let's say you specialize in helping people with HubSpot's our CRM. It's one of the CRM that a lot of our clients use. So if we type in HubSpot and look for events, basically anyone who's attending these events, it's highly likely they have HubSpot as well. So that's another great source to find clients who may be needing your help. And lastly, inside of Sales Navigator here, you'll see up at the top, forgive my extensions, it's got 8 million results there. But LinkedIn Sales Navigator only has the ability to actually show you 2,500. So you always want to get that list down to below 2,500 where possible. The smaller and tighter the list, the better. Now let's talk about why most messaging scripts fail. Good outreach does 3 things. It opens up a human-to-human conversation. It establishes relevance, and it qualifies people before pitching. The goal of that first connection message isn't to book a call, it's to get a reply. So you always want to be thinking in your head, I'm optimizing for conversation, not conversion. So here's a strategy I like to use. 99% of LinkedIn outreach gurus out there tell you not to send a connection message. I've split test both, and I can safely say that is terrible advice, and this is why. If you're trying to reach type A business leaders, which a lot of my clients are, they're busy and they don't have a lot of time to sit around chit-chatting on LinkedIn. Now, while it's true that connection rates do increase when you don't send a connection message, there's a piece of advice in a book that Ray Dalio wrote called Principles, and it's always stuck with me. Basically, he states that every decision we make has an initial first-order consequence, which you can usually see immediately, and then you have a second-order consequence. These are more impactful over the long term, but aren't obvious right away. And if you optimize for a positive first-order consequence, the second-order consequence is almost always negatively impacted, and vice versa. For example, if you skip a workout because you're busy at work, the first order consequence is you avoid sweating, you get more time back to do work, and that can be seen as a good thing on a busy day. But if you choose a pattern of skipping workouts when you're busy, it inevitably will start to impact your long-term health, which is the second order consequence. So relating this back to LinkedIn outreach, if you optimize for the first order consequence of a higher connection rate, when you go to message people a few days later, you're going to piss off a much higher percentage of those people when you try to have a conversation in the DMs. Because most people accept connection requests like they're giving 5-star Uber ratings. They don't actually mean it. It's mostly just politeness, and they don't do it expecting you to start a conversation with them a few days later. They can see right through that bait and switch tactic because it's what every guru out there is peddling. So instead, we optimize for the second order consequence. So my clients and I, we will always send a short note that's designed to spark conversation and make our intentions clear from the start. We're not pitch dapping or selling them, but we're making it clear we're connecting with them because there is something we want to talk about now. And guess what? Less people do connect, but there's more intent and implied consent to speak to those who read the connection request, know your intentions, and still press accept. Not only that, but most type A leaders appreciate people who just get to the fucking point and don't beat around the bush on LinkedIn. If you want to know exactly how to structure that first message, subscribe to my newsletter, because in the welcome email, you're going to get a direct link to the LinkedIn conversation playbook that I've pulled together for my clients. So you can give them a try for yourself. Now, this is another contentious topic, to automate outreach or not. I actually had this discussion at an event that I hosted recently in Sydney called the Wharf Social. Basically, get 10 business leaders together, get them on a boat, and we have a really nice, in-person interaction. The common themes that I found in that conversation is that anyone who tries Sales Navigator manually is that they literally don't have enough conversation using the tool to warrant paying like $150 a month or whatever it is these days. Then at the same time, there are others around the table who are really skeptical around using automation in LinkedIn. And I kept thinking to myself while I was listening to this conversation, the reality of how to use it actually lies somewhere in the middle. And this is exactly the approach that we use for our clients. You should absolutely not use automation or AI agents to just set and forget about your outreach strategy. Basically abdicating all responsibility of your professional reputation to a fucking machine. Instead, you can use a hybrid version where you get the automation to just do the boring parts that you'd be doing manually anyway, i.e. sending the connection request and doing the initial follow-up if they've not replied. Beyond that, the conversation needs to be handled by a human, in my opinion. So to sum up, automation works well for sending the connection requests, building lists, and any admin-heavy tasks. But it works terribly for replying to that first meaningful message that you get from someone or having nuanced conversations. The best systems are a hybrid of automating the boring parts, but keeping the human parts human, because they're really the moments that matter most. Now, once you have a system that's set up and is working, use the automation carefully. And where possible, you want to eventually offload your inbox management to an assistant or another member of staff who can be on there full time. Keep the final qualification and the calls human. And that's how you scale without becoming spam. Now, Sales Navigator isn't magic, but when you combine behavior-based targeting, intent-driven lists, clean positioning, and human-first messaging, it becomes one of the most reliable client acquisition systems in B2B right now. Now, if you want to see how to structure your activity when you log on every day, watch this video next, where I outline how you should prioritize that small amount of time that you get on LinkedIn every day as a founder or business owner in B2B. See you there.